Hello and welcome to Divephoria. I am Kobe, joined by Azael, and our two friends from Europe coming over for Rift Rivals here, Daniel Drakos and Vedius Day. What's up?
Hello.
Vedius Day.
That's me.
You got two names, so he only gets two names. If you only have two names.
I would have introduced them as the prodigal rap god and the guy who carries his boombox.
Yeah, exactly. That's me.
That is the division of labor.
Wait, where is it? Your job, you're slacking. No boombox
We left
today.
the boombox.
We left the boombox.
By the way, the boombox is actually ridiculously heavy.
Yeah.
It's like a 15-kilo boombox. Is that an exaggeration? It's like 10 kilos.
It was like a.
Remember, you have to
like
convert that to freedom units.
Yeah.
20 pounds. It was like 20 pounds, and it
It's
was like.
definitely more than that if it's 15 kilos.
I was
No, now
really,
I'm
That's a
spitballing.
poor-
I understand
This
that
is a
wasn't a
poor
good
conversion.
Spitballing.
Pounds is a currency where I'm from. What are you talking about?
How many dollars is it?
I mean, he grew up in the United States, so I assume that he would by default still use pounds, but I guess not.
No, it's the gym. Everything in the gym is kilos,
Oh, yeah.
which is great because when you come to the NA, you get to feel way better about yourself. You're like, it's Europe, I suck, but in NA,
The number's bigger.
the number doubles instantly.
Yeah, the
You're
number
like,
doubles.
yeah,
That means you're stronger.
Yeah.
for sure.
Everyone knows it.
100%. That's all that matters is how big the number is.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. First thing is first.
What's up?
Since we're having Rift Rivals once again, and we had a successful NA win with the bet last time,
Yeah.
would you care to have another bet? We seem
Yeah.
to have skipped over the bet on the one where we lost in between. But would you guys like to have another bet on who wins Rift Rivals? I think that it's dangerous for us to go about it with how the teams are
Yeah.
coming in towards this one.
But we are brave and noble bettors.
What if?
who are
What
willing
if
to
though?
make the
What
fun.
if we made it on like a single game rather than the whole
Okay.
thing?
yeah.
Because like, let's make it actually. Because like, expectations are we're all behind Europe, right?
Are we betting on the show match?
Oh, that's way better.
Double down for Kobe.
I'm 0-5 show matches. What are you doing? You're
I
crazy.
believe in you, Kobe.
Yo, that's way better.
That's way better. I'm down.
I'm putting my
I'm
faith.
down.
I'm putting my faith. My man Kobe here is gonna be 1-5 after this weekend, baby.
Actually, Freak.
I have
we
no
might-
faith in our team at all.
Doesn't matter. Sometimes you have to be willing to make a sacrifice. They came
Sure.
in
You
here
gotta take a
boldly willing
stand.
to bet on
That's
NA
fair.
for
All right,
Rift
I'm down.
Rivals.
I'm down. All right,
You
all
have to be
right.
willing to bet on Medic. To be clear, we're doing the same thing as last time, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Double
the
down.
loser has to make an ad for the winner's podcast.
All right.
Hell yeah.
And it has to
Deal.
be at least as good as the EUphoria Car Emporium.
That's
'cause
gonna
that
be
was a
tough.
great
Okay,
bet.
I'm going to be honest. It's really hard to beat Euphorium.
Yeah.
You know?
That's like
Maybe you can do like a promotional rap video. I would actually love that. Actually, this is what you have to do. You have to make a rap diss video about EUphoria.
the bed's changed now.
They should just brag about
Promotional
that.
rap video
Yeah.
about how great the dive is.
Wait, would Flowers do the same for Euphoria then?
No. Flowers isn't here. We will make you a suitably wonderful ad.
We can make promises for fun.
We're now betting on it. Also, he'll give you $10,000 to tweet in the pool.
It's cool.
Of
Nice.
his
All
own
right, cool.
money.
yeah, for sure.
All right, we'll work
Sounds
out
like
the
a great
details.
bet for us. I like this.
We'll
bet.
work out the details.
By the way, you
But the bet
should
is
look
on.
up, if you haven't seen the video of the payoff from the last bet when we won the first Rift Rivals, EUphorium Car Emporium.
we
You
did-
lost.
we lost.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, by the way, you lost.
we won.
You won.
There was no
You
bet
won
for the
because it was
first
a
year.
fantastic video, and I think it did.
In Kobe's head, it's like, we won, and then we also did you the favor of making this promotional video.
You'll notice that we are a charitable
Because
region.
we're
You saw the TL versus
Yeah.
G2 finals. We knew you had dinner plans.
We're
we
noble
wanted
in
to get you out of
victory
there
and
quickly.
also gracious in
It's getting pretty hot in here, guys. We turned the AC.
Well, as Kobe said, after we destroyed Europe and graciously made a video anyway, you can search EUphorium Car Emporium if you want to see a great ad.
World
for-
class
for-
acting.
So much.
Yeah.
It was
Greatest.
so good.
Yeah, top tier for sure. All right, well, the bet is on.
Yep.
And now we have to preview the most important, most serious, all the money and marbles online, everything's online here. It's the show match. It's NA versus
guess it is
EU
now.
Classic. It's we got Kobe, we got Reginald, Steve, Darius, and West Rice going up against Xpeke, Medic, Ocelot, Deficio, and Young Buck.
It's doomed. There's
Yeah,
literally
that's what my whole team is saying. We have a DM chat right now. Everyone's panicking. They're like, I heard Young Buck is still a challenger. I don't play anymore. What are we gonna do? I'm like, oh my god.
So,
Reggie wanted to play Shaco jungle, by the way, and forced me to play an off roll. I am a terrible off roll.
right, Medic,
I have never
taking
played
these
any
notes.
except
Write this
jungle
down,
my whole
Medic.
life.
You played Tom Catch top the other lane the other day. You got
Actually,
autofill top.
that's true.
And he's like, Isaac, what do I play? I'm like, Tom Kench. And then he went like 7-0.
It's so strong. Yeah.
I'm like, this shit is free.
That's true.
It's free. Okay.
Good
So
progress.
I have a lot of issues. I'm gonna start.
Yeah,
My
go.
the first and foremost is that Medic is two trick. He can basically play Thresh and Rakan, and he's jungling. And as you may
Thanks
have
for the
noticed,
info.
short of any new G2 scrim information, neither of those champions get played in the jungle. So that's pretty giga doomed. Also, he's playing against you in the jungle, and you actually play that role.
I play TFT only now. By the way.
Which means you have intimate details on how to build the perfect.
See, but like, I've only ever seen, when I watch Kobe stream, he plays Udyr and Evelyn. And I don't want to play against either of those champions. So I'm just telling Medic, like, listen, ban those
We
champions.
have a list.
First pick Sejuani. There's no way you can lose. Like, what are you going to do against Sejuani? You can't evade Sejuani. You can't counterpick Sejuani. Ban Trundle.
That's the NA technology.
And then additionally, Deficio's an inter. He's always been an inter.
Well, that's fair.
and that's that's my fear, right?
So-
People are like, Deficio was a pro player, and I was like, did you see that level of performance? Like,
Deficio can play Zyra. He had a good Zyra when we used to duo.
he also mostly played Twitch though back in the day, and his strategy was
don't let him play
His
the
strategy
carry.
was
We don't-
run it down till he gets 3 items, pray the game is not so lost that he can't win a team fight, and try to win
My
a team
favorite
fight.
thing about this was Carlos tweeting, I nominate to go bot lane, so I never have to see Peke Sivir again. So we already have some internal conflict.
Can we get a list of people on both sides that don't play anymore?
Well,
Like, I'm pretty sure X-Peke and Deficio are big in business, and Deficio plays some ARAMs.
Uh-huh.
I know Ocelot's also, full-time CEO, so maybe he plays a bit. But
So,
on your side, what's like...
Dyrus will play and then stop playing for a while and then come back later. Steve, I think, actually plays, and Reggie, I think, actually plays, but they play very casually.
They're the lowest rated.
and
I think, on the
they're in
team,
platinum
too.
or something,
Yeah.
something like that. So they play, but just very casually now. Kobe is legitimately D1. West Rice still plays and is high diamond, right?
I'm not sure what his rank is, but I think he still plays.
He still plays, I believe. So and I mean the thing is I don't know. I didn't know how much some of the other guys were playing in EU, but my assumption was that Dyrus was going to be the best player in it
That's what I
because
thought,
he's
yeah.
still when he comes back and starts playing, he hits Challenger and then he stops playing again for a while and then he comes back and he hits Challenger again.
In our chat, he's been saying that he hasn't been playing, so he's a little nervous too. Especially because we heard Young Buck was Challenger.
I
I don't know if
where
that's
you
true
heard
or
that
not,
from.
but if he's
I have
current
no
Challenger,
idea.
then nobody on our team is current Challenger for sure, or even close to that.
That's when you hit him with the Maokai. You're like, all right, I'll see you under my turret.
I have a date with the minion.
You want to play a skill matchup? How about Maokai?
I actually like it when we have a show match that's between a lot of people that haven't played recently. And you just kind of have to rely on the old days. You're like, I used to play this game. What do we do now?
But like, I'm happy because Medic can play Sejuani, which is like S tier jungler. Peke does play Sivir, S tier AD carry, right? Deficio will have to just play,
Bro, but
like,
this is
if he plays Braum or Alistair with like Sivir, Alistair bot lane, that's great.
So we
I
are.
like that he thinks compositions will matter.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, why does it matter if
It's
they
all
pick-
going to come down to the draft.
You have to play. You still have to play well. Except for Sejuani. Sejuani, you don't need any mechanics. But Sivir, it's like, what if they just play a kill lane? And it's like
Admittedly-
Sivir's a great champion, but not when she's 0-5 after 8 minutes.
You guys make excellent points.
Alternatively, what if they die 5 times?
Like, you could have the best draft in the world, but if Deficio runs it down, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, I didn't think that through.
we
I've
might.
been watching too much G2 and not enough salty Timo. We gotta change the paradigm here, Vedius.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, forget the drafts. I'm subbing in.
We are probably going to throw team comp out the window, by the way, and have Reggie play TF and stuff like that for the beat.
Yeah.
Blue car salute, baby.
So,
I mean, it's definitely comfort picks. That's what you go for in this match.
I don't know about comfort. More like meme picks. We'll see how it goes, though.
Yeah, I believe in us though. All right, let's get the power ranking. Who's
God.
we gotta start number 1. Who's the best player in the show match?
Okay.
Me!
I'm going
It's not me.
West Rice. I'm going West Rice.
Young Buck is a missing quantity for me, so I feel like I've
Young
heard.
Buck's actually challenger right
I'm
now.
voting
Let's
Young
get
Buck for sure. Just because I don't know if
That's a
that's
lot of
true, but
faith.
that's what I heard.
All right, I'm searching for Young Buck while we discuss this. But if it's not Young Buck, I
I
would
was
say
gonna
West
vote
Rice.
Dyrus because Dyrus
fine, yeah.
like he was like challenger last year as far as I know, and the year before that, like he quit league, but he comes back and he plays for fun and he gets challenger. I'm like, well, you're obviously still really good. But like I actually was thinking like, so I don't know how good a lot of the EU guys are anymore, but I was liking our chances in the show match because I'm like, Kobe's D1, Dyrus is capable of hitting challenger.
Yeah.
If West Royce is still playing, I'm like, all right, let's go. I think maybe
That is not how our team felt about it. Everyone was like, "We're doomed. Oh my God, EU's gonna crush us.
No.
Why are they setting up the teams like this? It's so uneven."
Me and Endo was so upset because we were like, if we played, we'd be unstoppable. And they picked Medic. This is rigged.
and then they ban Nocturne and you're done.
All right, I've got good news and bad news for the
Okay.
EU fans out there. So Young Buck does play. Fnatic Young Buck is level 8, so that's probably not his account. Actual Young Buck, which could also still not be his account.
Yeah, what you're
I'm literally guessing is D4 and
Okay.
Silver 4 and Flex, but
is that him though? I mean,
That's him.
that's
officially.
D4.
When was his most recent game?
6 days ago.
Oh.
I can see it.
all right. Regardless, continue with your power ranking here.
So I mean,
Okay.
I had you guys up near top. Medic was at least like D1 or D2 or something like that, right? Before, but he
So
guess he's a
he
2-trick.
fluctuates because
okay.
he's pick dependent. So when certain picks are good, he climbs higher.
Yeah, see, I didn't know that. I just knew he was like pretty like reasonably high diamond support. So he was pretty high on my tier list, but he's been falling once I heard he was
Yeah.
jungle.
He also doesn't play a lot recently either.
Also, I think West Rice is playing bottom.
oh
so-
really?
Yeah, because we have no marksman players either. On our
So it actually
we have a-
makes sense. You
we
put
have-
high elo
Oh,
player.
and for the record, Reggie doesn't play mid anymore. He plays jungle only. He's literally a one-trick Shaco.
TF jungle is great.
He's a one-trick Shaco that is, I don't know what rating, like platinum or something. So I don't know why Azael is so confident on our team,
But this is
like we have all junglers and top laners.
I'm just feeling good.
I'm just saying the stakes were
I feel like
already
you guys
high.
just play more though. They have a lot of doubt. You guys are
Yeah.
actually pretty good at the game.
Because like Azael, I was thinking comp wise, maybe Europe had a chance, and then Azael was like, "Yeah, but they have to play the comp," and I'm like, "Yeah, no, you're right. I have no faith in Europe anymore."
Also,
I don't know why you think our team plays the game more either.
You play a lot of League of
yeah,
Legends, Kobe.
you definitely play a lot.
And you just told me that West Rice is playing a lot and maybe better than you.
I did not say he was playing a lot.
Okay, well, he still plays and he's an active coach. You were hyping him up.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. You've also talked to your team ahead of time, and I am reasonably convinced that there's been no communication. And if I look at the list of personalities on this team, we have current Fnatic coach, Young
Yes.
Buck. We have Divephoria,
Yes.
very opinionated analyst,
Yes.
who believes he understands the game, still does.
Oh,
to a certain-
he'll tell you he doesn't know anything about League
All right,
anymore.
all right, there you go. And then you've got you've got Peke and Ocelot. So you've just got a bunch of people who are going to be yelling at each other, and Medic who's caught in the middle. And so, unless like
Do you
one,
know anything about Steve Reggie's relationship?
That's true. I
But-
can just see it now.
Okay, you're right. Yeah,
Carlos Peke versus Steve Reggie, who argues more.
I feel like the issue is Carlos just is literally a constant barrage of shots, but Peke is like pretty laid back, doesn't throw anything.
If there's pro view, I can only imagine everyone just in
please
all
put that
chat
pro view.
promoting
Oh
their
my
shots.
gosh! Yeah, pro view.
just oh god, it's gonna be good luck, Kobe. Have best luck. In terms of the
Thank
tier
you.
list, I think West Rice Dyrus are the best players.
Who's the worst?
I'm going for Peke. I think Peke
There's
is the worst.
absolutely no way.
Actually no, that's fair. That's fair.
There's
Reggie-
no way.
It's got to be
He
like.
he didn't play for a long time. Came back in as
All right.
AD carry.
on,
Played at.
on our team,
You-
I think Peke is the worst player on our team, but
It's
I don't know
gotta be
enough
like
about
Eve,
Reggie.
right?
You're talking about Dyrus can come back and get Chancho whenever he wants.
Yeah.
I guarantee Peke can.
Yeah.
You
This
think?
yes. This man came back whenever he wanted to and was a performer in. What do you call your
Yeah,
EULCS was the old name. Now it's LEC.
If I own
Whatever.
a team and I'm D3, at any point
call
I
that,
can sub
Little League
myself
across
in
the
two.
pond?
At any point, Daniel Drakos could come back and sub myself, and then I'm playing at an EULCS level. Like, did you watch his 80 carry games?
He played in the EULCS. None of our players were able to come back and play in the LCS.
Which, if he wasn't putting himself on the lineup, would be impressive. But he is the person in charge of making that decision.
IG's owner played at an LPL.
Yeah, like what?
LPL level. 100% win rate. He's basically a world champion.
It was the same principle. They put him in, remember, for the same reason that Cloud9 kept High for so long. Because, like, the shot calling. No one wanted to keep Peke in for his mechanics. I love the dude. He's really funny. I just don't think he's that good at League of Legends.
All right, well, you have him at the bottom. Who you got?
I guarantee Pekka is better than me. So if he's at the bottom for your list, then I'm at the bottom for my list.
I think you are like holding on
You
to
are
some love
so
for Peke
underselling
that it's like
yourself. Yeah.
he hasn't played Kobe. I think he's like mid-plat, like when he was
Last time
playing.
I played him, I was destroyed. So that's just fresh. in
You're
my-
holding,
when was
you're holding
that?
on
When
to some
was that?
trauma and some
was
like
like 4 years,
7 years ago.
it was
I'll
5
remember
years.
that day for the rest of my life.
It's cloudy out. There's a drizzle of rain. I ordered a purple slushie, and then I walked onto that stage, and Peke destroyed me.
We banned Oriana. We forgot to cast it in.
Casted it. Not again.
Or Steve.
or
Yeah,
Steve.
I'm going.
There's
to
no
Steve.
there's no
I'm sorry,
way
Steve.
there's no way Pekka is worse
Yeah,
than
yeah.
Steve.
I'll
also.
give you that.
I think me and Steve are probably the two worst players in the.
I think you're also
No,
underselling yourself.
Current, like
You're a
so
jungle
you're
player
talking about, like,
playing jungle.
There's no way you're not better than Reggie's current level of performance if Reggie is a one-trick Shaco and you're G1 and you play the same role.
Yeah.
All right, then we have the three worst players.
All right. Well, we're betting on the three worst players here. Our commercial lives are on the line here, Kobe. We're going for the 1-in-5 dream. We're going for the 1-in-5 dream.
From 05
Showmatch
to 15.
curse.
Yeah. Hey, work for Sea-Doo.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay, no one's gonna get that reference. But anyway, you got that.
I get the reference.
Yeah.
I'll laugh and pretend.
My teammate had my former teammate had lost to BlizzCon like 4 or 5 times in a row, and then he won. And yeah,
That's nice.
Yeah. So he had like the 1-in-4 dream.
Can we stop yelling and get some legitimate analysis on real teams now and do some power rankings for the real Rift Rivals teams?
Sure.
Huh? Anybody?
Yeah, down. I'm down.
I'll just we're going like off the top of our head.
So, would you like to just do power rankings, or do you want to go through each team and then where we stack them?
Yeah, how are we doing this?
Power ranking.
Okay.
We can just chat through.
All right.
It's for funsies.
I'm gonna start. I've got a controversial one.
Do you?
No, as you all
Remember
know,
your tier list, right?
Yeah, G2 I'm gonna say is probably number 1. I'm gonna it's a stretch. I know.
Interesting.
It's wild.
That's a bold move.
That's weird considering you rate his 80 carries so poorly in Europe.
I will kick you off for Deficio in 30 seconds. You watch yourself. Yeah, I did that. All right, and I have to live with that shame. But a man is allowed to
I
change.
mean, all of Europe kind of did that. He wasn't even in your top 3 for All Pro.
Yeah,
I mean, it's true.
Yeah. See, there you go.
No, I understand.
He's not even a top 380 carry.
he's still.
Meanwhile, us in NA, we knew
All right.
all along
Yeah.
he was going to blast us.
Yeah. Yeah. We were confident.
Yeah,
We were
makes
like,
sense.
yeah, we have no chance. He's played it for about a month. Yeah, of course. Why wouldn't he?
Totally. Finals, 3-0, fastest ever.
Yeah, you heard my
number one.
prediction on
Yeah.
that.
Anyway,
Yeah.
G2 number 1.
Oh my God, give us 20 minutes tops.
I feel like you're trying to rage bait me into going on another perks rant, but it's fine.
No. I'm just jabbing. Friendly banter-mate.
All right,
Yeah,
so
for sure. We're on the
And
same
listen to
team, by the
you.
way. Oh,
I'm assuming you're.
He is from Portland. So
Yeah. Captain Flowers made that very clear.
yeah, that was one of the only arguments he had against our region, I thought.
I'm assuming Fnatic is your number 2 team.
Yes,
That
wow.
tournament?
Whoa.
Big brains.
Is there a debate for number 3? That's my question. Who's your number 3?
You're saying there's not even a debate for number 2? It's just Fnatic for sure.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I see how that.
They are the only.
That's why we don't invite them.
I'm willing. Do you want me to make my arguments? Do you want to present? Do you want to go like I disagree?
At least try, yeah.
Do you disagree first off? Do we even need to should we spend our time in a different spot? Fnatic beat G2. in a best of one.
In one game where they're
Most
actually
of this
both running
tournament-
it down.
Most of this tournament is a best of one. Also, that's what everyone says, and then you play a European team, and that running it down suddenly looks real good. That's all I'm saying.
So I will say that having watched that game, I agree that G2 ran it down. But
Cap's died at level 1 to a level 2 Renekton. He didn't even back off.
But, like, but I
excuse
will-
me, he ran it up. Died there.
And died
Kobe,
6 times.
this is why people love you as an analyst. It's the little details that you point out.
And I have to say, as far as players on all sides, Broxa was the best player in the whole game.
yeah.
Broxa did not run it
monster.
down.
No.
Broxa was popping off hard.
So,
That
like-
was actually an insane jump.
And that's the thing, right? So Fnatic has evolved to a point where they no longer have to rely on their bot lane, which is what they did in last split, where they were a very one-dimensional team and they could really only team fight, right? Whereas this split, Bwipo and Nemesis are both playing much better than they were, and Broxer is playing around them, like pretty consistently. Their bot lane never gets any jungle attention anymore. And just because they're pretty reliable, you can often just leave them to their devices. So I feel like that's why I have a lot of confidence in Fnatic. They have a better early game than G2 does. Their 2 solo laners seem to be performing extremely well, and that gives me a lot of confidence for them coming into the tournament. So.
Yeah. I think their early game is really good. Like I've watched all their games this split, and I think
It's
their
way
their
better
early
than
game
Spring.
is really impressive.
Yeah.
And I also do think that it's somewhat of a meta thing that allows you to not like there's some teams that are just kind of more consistently. It's like, okay, there's these scaling crit marksmen that are really reasonable, like farm lanes like Sivir and so on, where you can just pick this and they can just be pretty stable and you can play to other lanes on the map. So I do think that kind of helps them too, that, it's not a meta where you're having to play, I think, as aggressively around bot lane, or at least like it's totally a fine option to just pick more like scaling stuff bot and play to the top side of the map or play to mid lane. And I think Broxa is like the biggest bright spot for me right now for Fnatic. Like he's been playing so well, which is what makes them, I think, really, really scary because like you said, that was my biggest takeaway from the Fnatic G2 game was like, holy, Broxa was a monster this game.
And he's been a monster like literally every game.
He was
split.
just everywhere.
Yeah, and like ever since like I know that there was some bad blood about like how a lot of people viewed it as a very negative that like Fnatic just kind of announced kind of without talking to Broxa like, hey, we're gonna put this player behind Broxa, but like for better or worse, if that pressure is the contributing factor, he has been just dominating this entire split. And even more than just the meta, like I'm just glad to see Fnatic willing to change and willing to put more in their solo lanes because like after
They
last
just seem
split,
better now. They just seem more open to just being a little more well-rounded.
Nemesis feels integrated into the team finally, right? And then that's when you see it in the play that they're willing to play their solo lanes because they tried a little bit at the start of last spring and it was just like everything was going wrong. Broxa was never mid at the right time. Nemesis was going in when Broxa wasn't there, and like the community.
But I also just think they were super one-dimensional, right? Which was that they would team fight, and like that was their only win condition, which is why I think Origen beat them so handily because Origen's like biggest strength was their prep, and they knew exactly what Fnatic would bring to the table, and then they prepared for it and dealt with it. So I think that was Fnatic's biggest flaw last split. To me, what was so impressive is again like how diverse they are in their styles. Like watching how they played their draft. Like last week they had Sivir and like they had to play very heavily towards their side lanes, and their use of like Shen Rakan was like really fun to watch. And then again, like they drafted like a heavy pick style comp with like Pyke and Karma, and the way in which they moved around the map and the way they utilized it was just really impressive to me. So I think they're really strong. A lot of people still don't rate them higher than G2 right now because G2 did make a lot of mistakes in that game, so people don't have the same conviction to make that commitment yet. But I have a lot of respect for these two teams, and I just like I can't say with conviction that how strong TL is relative to them because I've watched them, but I haven't like done deep dive analysis on them, right? But for me, they sit at like 3-4 somewhere in this behind the Fnatic and G2. But it's harder for me because again, I haven't done that same deep dive for TL.
Yeah, of course, and we have. So now it's our turn to take over because. Kind of what you were alluding to, this is the spot where we do get some debate. Team Liquid have actually had the best early games in our league for summer. Xmithy has had much better games. He got destroyed in some very big games on the super big stage. I know, after that, a lot of people were even questioning, the jungle rankings in NA again. And, people had like Svenskeren and Meteos passing him and stuff. But he has had some good performances recently for Team Liquid as they finally, brought it back together, some more consistency here as we're getting through summer. Definitely started off very rocky for all of our returning teams, by the way. Fun stat, actually, the EU teams that are going to Rift Rivals are 14-4, 78% win percentage, and our NA teams that are going to Rift Rivals are 16-8.
You've also played an
67%. Is it actually
played
13?
an extra week,
I
haven't you?
think it is. I don't think it's definitely not 16. I'm pretty sure it's 13.
Because we played the extra week.
Yeah.
Because I think that here, let me.
What did you say the score was? 16 and what?
Standing.
I'm pretty sure it's. I recall the.
It's 6-2-5-3-5-3.
Okay.
So it's 16.
Okay, it was 16.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. I mean, certainly like.
Because that was the earlier week.
Oh yeah, you're right. I was thinking about it previously. TL had a bit of a rocky start, but I mean that was not surprising to me at all. All their players were telling me that they were going to lose because they took time off after MSI. They all kind of felt burned out. And they did start 2-2. But yeah, I mean, even despite some of those games, as Kobe said, they have been our strongest early game team by like all metrics. I think they've gotten first tower every single game except one. They have like the biggest goal differentials in the early game. Their losses were actually like were kind of very uncharacteristic because it was like they had these early game leads and then they just kind of like threw in the mid game, and that was like always their biggest strength. I have a lot of confidence in TL still. Having talked with some of the players on their team and stuff, they feel like they have been learning a lot and learned a lot from their losses against G2. And that kind of to them showed them some of the areas that they were deficient and things that they had to change and improve on and understand to like get to the next level. I definitely think that G2 is clearly the best team. I think that Fnatic has had a really good start to spring, but it's hard for me to put Fnatic above them when like I think that Fnatic in spring was so much weaker and and in playoffs was so much weaker, and like TL I think has been like steadily improving for so long. Like I'm not ready to fully say that Fnatic is like for sure better than TL off of like 3 weeks of them playing really well. It'll be interesting. I mean, maybe Fnatic just continues this run and actually competes with G2 in playoffs, and then holy crap, Europe has two of the best teams in the world, and that's like super exciting. But I haven't felt like fully convinced yet, because their biggest test was the G2 one, and I felt like G2 made so many mistakes that like that wasn't to me like enough to be like, yep, Fnatic's better than G2 now, of course, right? So like I still have some hesitation about like ranking Fnatic above them.
And even though, Fnatic got that victory in that game, Nemesis himself made a decent amount of mistakes, especially early on with the Twisted Fate, getting solo killed by the level 5, then hitting level 6 Akali.
Yeah.
And then right after ulting away with Akali right next to him. So like there are mistakes on both sides too.
Yeah.
So we got some hope over here.
Whippo also got solo killed right after solo killing Cap.
Oh, that'll happen every game. That's almost a guarantee. I'll give you that one.
It was definitely a messy game. Like I thought Broxa played absolutely incredible. One of the things that does always like give me some hope is I think that TL is fairly good at attracting junglers and Smithy's fairly good at being kind of a containing force. I think that TL, like I am much more scared about like the teams that are going to do like really crazy stuff, right? Like, and that's why I think one of the reasons why G2 is so hard for them, because no one here does that, right? Like Fnatic is a very, very strong team, but I also think Fnatic plays like a much more standard style, which I think gives TL more of a shot. Certainly, I think it's a lot closer than I thought it was.
The NA teams play Pyke Karma bot lane.
So I was going to get to this when we get to the patch, but Jat messed up his timeline or something because the Pyke nerfs are next patch. So we're playing with full power Pyke, and we have not been able to utilize Pyke. So I don't think even if I think the Pyke will be banned by most NA teams because I don't think our teams have even gotten good practice against teams utilizing Pyke effectively, because our stage games with Pyke have been quite poor from even the teams that we have that are trying to use it and flex it around. So yes, we have teams that have used it and played it. They haven't specifically played Karma Pyke bottom lane, and I think that is going to be one of the biggest differences for this patch. That is going to be advantage for Europe.
Yeah, I mean Karma, I think is just like based on the
she'll get permaban.
Karma's just gonna get banned every game, right? Like it's interesting when you look at some of the differences in like where priorities are. Like in an A, Yuumi basically just gets permabanned, right? Like on 9-12, there's 16 Yuumi bans and only 4 plays, right? Compared to Europe on 9-12 is 4 bans and 4 plays, right? So it's like obviously you guys are much more willing, I think, to let it through. It's kind of interesting seeing some of the different priority. Aurelia in NA is also like mega high priority. in EU, it's not really getting played. So there are some differences, amongst how the teams are prioritizing. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of like, if there is NA hope, and I think at this point with Fnatic performing so well, most people are assuming that Europe is going to win Rift Rivals, right? Like
we're the underdogs again.
We are certainly the heavy underdogs. But I think people's hope was always like, when we were at MSI and we were talking about it, people were like, oh, well, Fnatic and Origen didn't look that good in spring. So it's like, okay, well, we're going to be worse than G2, but what if we have 3 teams that are better than the other 2 and they could all just, beat Fnatic and Origen over and over and then lose to G2 and we could still win? That's looking a lot less likely because Fnatic looks a lot better. And I've even heard that Origen is doing quite well in scrims and is impressing people. So I think that gets tough, but I'm still willing to kind of like hold firm on TL being the second.
So about the scrim thing too, I know like you're talking to some of the players. I just talked to Trashy in the smoothie bar. He said
Cold. His name is Cold.
He's not Trashy.
I like
anymore.
the Trashy names.
I really love Trashy. I miss it too.
He said they only played 1 set.
Yeah.
So far. So
yeah. Well, it was just
which means they have 100% win rate. Probably
1 single set of scrims.
Yeah, it was that they had been much more impressive than the team was expecting.
Yeah,
basically what it was, right? Which is fair. And I mean, Origen hasn't had the best run in EU this split, right? They've lost like all the top 3 teams. They lost to Fnatic, G2, and Splice, and and certainly looked somewhat exploitable there. But yeah, I mean, I think Fnatic and G2 are arguably the best 2 teams. G2 is for sure the best team. So Europe has a big advantage, right?
So the one thing that I feel is the biggest difference between top American teams and top European teams are just the way in which they play the map in the mid game, largely because it feels to me that European teams are much more willing to make sacrifices on one side to gain vision in another to set it for a play later on. And like this will tie in more later when we eventually talk about TSM, who I think have probably the worst mid game of all the teams coming into this tournament. But the thing that I think is really strong about Fnatic is how well they utilize their leads and how strongly they invest in division, because it feels like that it feels to me like European teams are often always thinking about what they can do next rather than the immediacy, and the way in which they set up those plays always looks very strong and convincing, which is why I have a lot more faith in Fnatic than I do in Team Liquid, because for me, one of the biggest issues I've always had of Team Liquid in the past was that they slow the game down a lot in the mid game, and like they're very patient and calm, and like it takes them a lot longer than I would normally expect a team when they build up early leads. Whereas Fnatic and G2 feel a lot faster and a lot more efficient in their setups and execution. So
my main counter to that one would be Cloud9, because I think
Cloud9 is
they definitely do that in NA.
So that's why, in my opinion, Cloud9 was one of the scarier teams, because they're the ones that most replicate a European style, in my opinion, where they do seem a lot more fast-paced. And it's not necessarily about building massive early game advantages, but just when the mid-game comes, they feel super proactive to me. And they seem very investment on, like, we want to control this area and actually play towards it. So that's why Cloud9 is one. But they seem really inconsistent right now, based on what I've seen. So I wasn't quite sure where to rate Cloud9.
The funny thing about that is that TL actually has the lowest average game time in NA by, like, a fair bit.
But like ending the game, I'd like so
they have a couple minutes faster game time than Cloud9.
So like in terms of like overall ending the game, I don't think Team Liquid struggle. It's just that phase between like 15 minutes and like 25 where I feel there's a lot of opportunities for Team Liquid to do things when they don't.
Yeah.
And more often than not, it ends up being the enemy team tries to make a play, Team Liquid punishes it, and then like, oh, they've made this colossal mistake. We know exactly what to do in this moment. Let's snowball from here. And like, I rate Team Liquid very highly, and I think they're a very good team. Like, they've already proven that on multiple occasions. But it's that setup process where like you actually like invest the vision into a certain area, control the wave.
I feel like that's such a misconception. I don't find that to actually be true with Team Liquid. And I know people always mean about NA, ARAM, or whatever.
But I don't think they just ARAM. That's not what I'm trying to say. I just think that they ultimately skip steps in like a lot of their setup making. And I feel like a lot of teams don't effectively punish them for it, which is what I feel happened a lot at the international.
What are the like steps you think they're skipping?
So like, I don't have a VOD, so I can't talk about specifics, but the best example I have because again, right, I'm not doing deep dives on Team Liquid, whereas I am trying to do them on European teams. But like one of the examples I have on Fnatic is when G2 set up a dive top, they trade that for entire river vision, right? And because their goal is they're either going to make in the next few minutes a trade for Herald or a play for Drake, depending on how G2 choose to reset. So they have countermeasures in place based on every decision that the enemy team has just made based on the next advantages they've just gotten. So like this forward thinking to me is what puts them ahead of a team like Team Liquid that, in my opinion, don't do those kind of setups.
So for Team Liquid, for me, they constantly are setting up for buff invades. And I think they prioritize theirs a lot more than other teams.
That's fair.
And they do look different, but that is something that they do, rank fairly highly with being proactive. So they definitely are setting up these plays in advance. It's just that I think it's in a different area.
Yeah, I mean, like I would say, like, so compared to G2, no one looks proactive, right? Like I feel like G2 is just so aggressive. Their average game time, even in Europe, is like 4 minutes faster than the next closest team, right? Yeah. And that's like 6 minutes faster than TL basically. Like, they're so fast and they're so talented. And G2 like wins games by forcing fights and forcing skirmishes and like outplaying their opponents. And they have like all these ridiculously talented.
I mean, they're also very smart.
They are very smart too. But I'm not trying to say that they're just dumb and run in. That's not my point at all. It's more just that like I think that the two teams push their advantages in different ways. Like for TL, for me, like their mid game is focused around setting up vision for buff invades pre 20 minutes, and then post 20 minutes, it's about setting up around Baron and looking for picks. They play through side lanes heavily with impact and try to like force people to respond, and then create like odd number fights or fights where like they can essentially get a pick out of fog or start an advantageous team fight, and that is to me how they close out their games. I think like, when you look at G2, it's much more skirmishy, and I think it's a lot like more flashy. It's certainly faster, whereas TL I think is looking for more of the guaranteed play, which does obviously show in their slower team than G2. But I don't think that they're like a weak mid game team. Like at least in North America, I think that has always been one of their greatest strengths. Is that throughout all of spring and over the last like while since they've been winning all these championships, it's always been that TL gets a lead through laning and then wins a mid-game team fight, and then the game is over. And generally, if you lose that mid-game team fight to TL, no one feels like you can come back because they are considered like very good at closing out once they have that.
Yeah. I mean, I think a good comparison would be watching the G2 Fnatic game, right? So Fnatic, Broxa dives top lane. Immediately they dive mid lane, with Hilly roaming over also.
Yes.
And so it's like back-to-back dives, and then he's back up camping top. Like that's not something that Team Liquid would set up, right?
Sure.
Because they would rather not go for those tower dives because they consider them to be more risky, I think. Mm-hmm. And they would rather try and push up the wave to be able to get the vision on the buff and then just steal the buff. So the rewards are much bigger for the Fnatic that get back-to-back successful tower dives, an incredibly good camp on top side. And I think that's where a lot of the differences of like what they look like towards the mid game come from. Because maybe someone like Svenskeren or Cloud9, go for dives like that. But I don't think we have a lot of.
I would say Clutch and stuff
maybe
as
Clutch,
well,
yeah.
But like some of the teams, like those aren't teams that are nearly on the level of G2, so it's never going to look as good.
I think that to Vedi's point, it's not necessarily that like Team Liquid have like an atrociously weak mid game. It's that they're not maximizing every opportunity in a way that you feel that like G2 or Fnatic would. And I think that the tower dives there are a good example where he's not going up there without knowledge of where the enemy is when he does that tower dive, right? And I think in the eyes of Fnatic, that's a guaranteed play, right? And maybe TL feel like they're taking a risk, but to me that just means that you don't have faith in your players to mechanically execute, right? Because like what resources that top laner has under the tower. You know that he has flash. You know that you have to burn it. Like, yes, there is always room for you to get outplayed in that tower dive. Like that can happen, but like if you have the man advantage and like you've practiced to play, it's a pretty set play to dive that tower.
Yeah, but it's also like for mine, like the problem is it's hard for me to die on this sword because, as I said, I haven't done like deep dives into Team Liquid.
Also,
right?
you've died on a lot of swords already. How many lives you got?
Right, but like I've passively watched Team Liquid and. Especially in the earlier weeks when they were naturally struggling, one of my big criticisms of them was that their mid game seems a little bit all over.
They were
the place,
trolling.
right?
They were trolling for sure.
Like, but that's my point, right? And like in recent weeks, they've definitely gotten better.
Yeah.
But I also remember a game Team Liquid versus Golden Guardians, that did happen recently,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I remember watching that game and thinking that Golden Guardians were making a lot more mistakes than I felt Team Liquid was being the proactive team. And like this has been my opinion of Team Liquid for a while, which is that they're very good at punishing mistakes and converting them into overwhelming advantages that teams can't come back from.
Yeah.
But it feels to me that the biggest difference between them and the likes of our top European teams is European teams force you into difficult situations where you've got to like outplay your way out of them, whereas Team Liquid just waits for you to make that mistake and then they will punish you for it. And it's tied into terms of like slightly different perspectives and playstyle where there's slightly more higher risk in the European style, whereas there's less, but there's higher like high risk, high reward versus lower risk, but then potentially, you know, same reasonable reward. But again, like I don't think Team Liquid is by any chance a bad team. And in a best of one especially, I think it's very easy for them to take games off of all three of our teams because they have the talent on their roster to be able to do it. But yeah. I don't know how much more time you guys want to spend on Team Liquid.
We'll probably push forward a bit, but unless people have final points. But I was just gonna say, like, I think it is also like at the end of the day, it somewhat comes down to like a philosophical difference of like how do you want to play the game?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And I do think like while I think G2 is the best team in the world right now and that they were amazing and deserving winners, I have felt like people are writing off other playstyles more heavily at post MSI because G2 won in that way. And I do think that sometimes it's a little bit short-sighted. You know, like I've even had interviews where people are like, now that everyone knows that the G2 way is the only way to play the game, what should these other teams do, right? Like what are all these other idiots doing basically? But you know, I do think it's important to also like look back at SKT versus G2 and like that was an incredibly close series that like I think SKT threw, right? And that was, it's not to say at all that G2 didn't deserve to win, they did. Just more the idea that like SKT was playing on that full other side of this other end of the spectrum, right? Where they are that like more passive team who takes the slow advantages. And my point is just that I think like both styles can work. But like G2, you know, certainly is like the epitome of their aggressive style, and they're so good at it. But I don't think that like every team needs to beat G2 and be like a worse version of them, right? Like I think that there is still room in League of Legends for the different styles, and I still think that like a team can rise up and even like, you know, even if it's not Liquid, even if it is like a different team, and like match G2 with a different style, right? Like I don't think that the only way to beat G2 is like being a better G2.
Yeah, so I agree. It feels like anytime one team starts dominating with the style, it feels like the entire narrative becomes.
Why aren't you SKT?
Yeah, how can we copy this? Why aren't you a Korean team? Why aren't you an X team? Why aren't you an LPL team now? Like, why don't you play that way? And that's always frustrating for me. But the thing that I like about the G2 style, that I don't necessarily like about the TL style, is that it's constantly training proactivity. So for TL in your region, if they're uncontested playing a passive style, when they go to an international team against teams that are, let's not call it passive, whatever you want to call the TL style, right? Reactive, you want to call it punish focused, whatever you want to call it.
It's just hard because they're one of our faster.
They're the fastest team.
They're our
league.
fastest team with the highest early gold advantage.
But that doesn't tell you the whole story, right? Like there's a difference
because like
between,
this is the thing, right? This is where we get into a gray area because like this is kind of Azael's point. Well, like in my opinion, Team Liquid could push their lead harder, right?
And we already kind of went over with the explanations of like the tower dives versus the buff and
right.
boost, like
and
the
that's what
explanation
like
that we
there,
talked about.
there are many ways in which like you can do it, and the reality is Team Liquid have a lot of very talented players.
Sure.
And like domestically, they probably have the best player in each position, bar a couple of debates here and there, right? So like honestly, I think they have different styles.
Yeah,
I have reasons, and we have reasons to believe why Fnatic's stronger than Team Liquid. I think there's fair arguments to suggest and believe why Team Liquid is stronger than Fnatic. Like, obviously, EU fans are gonna be like, "Well, Fnatic just beat G2," so like they're gonna be angry and say, "How can you sit there and say this?" You know.
All right, you're totally. I just want to let me finish my point here. All I want to say is that I feel like if you're in a region where you have two teams playing at a top level, playing both styles, you're both pushed to your limit. But if you're the only team, right now for G2, if you're playing this style and people are trying to follow you, I feel like you're much more prepared to like push and to constantly test and to improve, even like in opportunities where you are clearly the number one team. Whereas I don't think TL are set up to continuously improve in a region where they're not tested as hard playing this style. That's the thing that I think is the disadvantage. I think that if you're constantly proactive and you're pushing and you're doing some shit that may look like running it down sometime, you're learning those limits that are relevant. Whereas if you're just punishing teams that are like below you in the standings, that are worse than you because you are smarter as a macro team, like I don't think that you're learning as much.
Yeah, I mean, I think people would certainly, bring up immediately Cloud9 and TSM, right? If you look at Spring, these teams all were 5-game series against each other. TL is not like so insanely better. We shit on the region. It was a reverse sweep in the finals against TSM, right? So like I think these teams haven't like all been as dominant in summer, but at least in spring in a full split, that was like clearly our 3 best teams, and they was 2 reverse sweeps in semifinals and then finals, right? So like I would say that most people believe in North America that those 3 teams are very competitive and should be pushing each other. Again, I mean, it's like hard to really
But do
prove.
you think of that for TSM given their current play?
TSM, given their current play, I think is very, very slow, right? And I think that TSM has somewhat regressed. I think one of the things with TSM in spring was that they were actually playing more the MSI style with like
agree, yeah.
much more aggressive flex picks. They have reverted from that. I still think Cloud9 plays very aggressively in up tempo and is willing to take those risks. And that has shown for many years to be true, right? Like that is why they generally do well internationally while the other NA teams falter, because they're willing to take risks and they're willing to try new things, and it works out for them. And that's been true this split as well, for both good and bad, right? They've been doing a lot of Gragas Yasuo and things like that, where no other teams are really doing that.
And Team Liquid has always put in this bucket of, passive only, punishing mistakes for, mostly as long as they've existed in going to these international tournaments. However, like talking to the players at MSI, there was a big shift in how they think about the game. And it came from IG, right? It came from Ning specifically. And Xmithy changed his playstyle a lot. And he had some hard int games by changing his playstyle, but he also had some hard carry games. So yes, like they're not a completely different team. But I would say that they're well aware of, the differences in styles and have adapted. So we should yes, Europe is definitely advantaged coming into this. I think the main thing we're trying to promote here is that Team Liquid has a chance for this. I think Cloud9 as well. I'm excited to see how they do. And I don't think it's just going to be, Team Liquid is playing this passive style where they don't do anything and they only punish mistakes.
I agree.
I most definitely see them coming out swinging.
Yeah, for sure. But either way, I think we're all at least in agreement that it's G2, it's Fnatic TL, in some sort of tier, whatever arrangement, I think. For me, then the question becomes, where do you slot in Origen, in comparison to TSM and C9? I think that my initial thought certainly would have been that Origen was on the weaker end, given their performances in summer. But certainly as I was saying, or Kobe said earlier, I talked to some of the players and they had been saying that they're very competitive in scrims, and it is just scrims. But Origen I think certainly can be more in the mix, and I think that TSM has not looked impressive in summer in the way that they have played. I think TSM still has strung together a number of wins, but my big concern with TSM is that if you're going to play really slow and play scaling picks and this sort of thing, well, that's Origen's wheelhouse, right? And I can definitely see Origen doing well against TSM if both these two teams are just going to play for a late, right? So that's my main concern for where TSM is versus Origen. I think that Cloud9 would be a better matchup against Origen because they do actually push the tempo a lot more, and I think that they can abuse them in ways that we have seen Splice and G2 and Fnatic do so far this split. All of their losses, I think, were them kind of being punished more heavily in the early game. And TSM has not shown that they're going to do that. Maybe they show us a different style, but it has been lots of Azir and late game stuff. And I feel like the stuff that you were saying about TL is more true about TSM this split, where TSM feels like they are actually just waiting for someone to mess up to end the game, right? Their last game this weekend was 50 something minutes that I was casting, or at least 50, where it was they had this comp where it's clearly they couldn't be beat in a 5v5, but they couldn't actually close the game, and it was taking forever. And I feel against a team like Origen, that is a way to lose, right? Because Origen is very talented, I think, in that late game, and are kind of more of that kind of slow macro team that I think could take advantage of that.
And to be clear, on the TL front, reactive to me isn't the worst thing in the world, because if you're willing to capitalize on on small mistakes in any way that's big. But like when you talk about that TSM game specifically, watching it back, like that just felt to me like TSM just didn't know what to do. That wasn't like we're being reactive. That just felt like we actually are just in a situation where we know we win late and we'll just like.
Which game?
This is the TSM game he's talking about, the 50-minute one. Who were they playing?
Golden Guardians.
Golden Guardians.
I have a lot of opinions on TSM after watching.
I mean,
that
they
game.
even said after the game that, oh God, we should have ended that like 20 minutes ago. What were we doing? Like, so it wasn't even like TSM was unaware of it. Like, this is just like.
Well, to me,
so-
that's like
so-
not a reactive
No,
thing,
no,
right?
of
That's
course.
just like a not like a
Yeah.
great. That's
Yeah.
just a bad
Yeah.
game, right?
Yeah.
So I'll start with Origin and I'll get to TSM, right?
So what would be your initial power rankings? Anyway?
So
Just go.
I'm
through
of the
what you said.
opinion that it would be G2 Fnatic
Yes.
would actually
Yeah.
sit at the top.
yeah.
Then it would be TL and Origin are actually relatively close, with TL being above them. And then I would have C9 TSM. And I would have TSM being the worst out of the 6. So in my opinion, I think that Origin have improved individually in terms of we now have more stars than we did last split, because last split, one of their biggest issues was that they were a really good team, but very rarely could you rely on anyone to be like that difference maker that could like swing a game or help you like win. Whereas this split, we now have Patrick and Alphari both stepping up pretty dramatically, where Alphari is like consistently winning his lane, or going even in matchups that should be a lot harder for him. And Patrick is now a much more reliable carry than he was last split. But their teamwork seems to be a lot worse, where it feels like that they've slowed down the pace of the game pretty dramatically, because they are actually almost always waiting for the perfect play, and it feels like that they can't decide what their next best move is. So they don't actually optimize a lot of their setups either, and they don't utilize a lot of their windows properly. So I feel like they've gone worse from what we saw last split. And having spoken to Martin, he tells me that the team is basically just off to a slow start again. But like that worries me and concerns me, that a team that finished in second last split, and in my opinion, pretty convincing way, have now like gotten slightly worse. Which is why like I put them below Team Liquid. But individually, I think that because of the level up, I think they have a pretty good shot against Team Liquid because of how much better a lot of the players have gotten, which is why I have confidence. But if I was to put a best of 5, I'd put a little bit more weight right now on Team Liquid winning it. But individually, I was pleasantly surprised by how much better Origin have gotten compared to last split.
Yeah, big agree. Patrick is the big standout to me. Alphari, I'm still not sold on. Yes, he's doing better, but I still don't.
So good.
I know he's good, but like he hasn't had the same explosiveness. But you see it in the G2 OG game for Patrick specifically, and for the Patrick Mithy bot lane, that they used to just kind of exist, is what it felt like a lot of games. Like yes, they had their moments, but now it's very clear that when they have an opportunity to play aggressive, that they will be aggressive, that they will be proactive, which is a lot more than I can say for like especially their start in spring, where they were just like running it down basically. You know, they were getting caught out, they were dying a ton in the early game, and now they're playing more aggressive and they're dying less. So that bot lane has gotten significantly better. I agree though. I still don't think that they have like the edge over TL in a best of 5 with enough prep coming in. Yes, because I think that they are a very good prep team. Now that said, I don't know what TL's reputation is as a prep team, but yeah, I agree. I mean, I have the same.
They're good at adapting.
I mean, but to be fair, like Cloud9 is just kind of in this list at number 5 for me because TSM is 6 and they're like the other team remaining, right? Like I actually am not sure how close C9 is to.
But that's not because
TL.
their inconsistencies. Like their highs have been really impressive to me.
Yeah, but that's the thing is it's just like I'm sure that they're below. Pretty sure that they're below TL. These teams haven't played yet in your league, so I'm not 100%. Like I'm pretty sure they're below TL, and I'm pretty sure they're.
Wait, they have
close
played,
to
haven't
TL. No, it's next week.
Oh.
I think that a lot of people, even NA fans, would agree more so than usual with your rankings of all the EU teams much more top heavy, because we have had a summer split where TSM looks literally worse than they did in spring, and Cloud9 just lost to 100 Thieves. Like we have had a lot of our Rift rivals representatives dropping a lot of games, and the inconsistency that you're talking about has been true of every one of our representatives. So that's why it's super hard to, get up and push and be like, well, no, as you can clearly tell here by the
time that they lost to 100 Thieves.
Well, to be fair, 100 Thieves has won like 3 games in a row, and
100 Thieves are streaking. That's the power of Maurice Amazing Stuckenstein and his one trick Sejuani lifestyle.
But I will say, like, so
okay.
mainly because of TSM, I did the I've already reviewed TSM versus Golden Guardians. When I talk about mid-game mistakes, they were the biggest offenders for me, just because like there was one play specifically where they were doing everything right, where they had 5 people collectively group mid. They forced mid so that they could gain priority over the river in order to set up for the Infernal Drake that was about to spawn, right? They then gain priority mid and then leave. They don't go into the river. They just walk off. And they then come back to try and challenge for Drake. They face check into a blind river where Anivia then lands a double Q stun onto their carries and they just die. And then Golden Guardians gets Baron and I'm like, the game is over. And the only reason why Golden Guardians doesn't win is because they then try to dive TSM's Nexus and Azia, who's just sitting on 3 items, is like, oh, I guess I'm going to kill you all now. And then they win because like they have better players. So I was just like, I was so disappointed in TSM because like as Azael was saying, last split, I felt they were really good. Like their early game felt really strong. I was impressed with their ability to flex like a lot of the meta champions. And their bot lane felt like really, really solid. So I was very surprised on my most recent expectations of TSM because like I've heard a lot on broadcast as well, like Greg versus Acadian. Acadian had a terrible game. Like that was shocking to me.
I feel like you've gone in enough on TSM. I feel like,
but like I'm disappointed because I had really high expectations of this team, and like they were really good last split, and like I went out and I said I felt like TSM was the better team based on that series against Team Liquid,
especially coming back from MSI where it was like, well, TSM is the team that was most close to doing the style that G2 and IG and everything were doing. They can play all these flex picks. They have the great solo laners. And then if you ever watched TSM's content coming into the season, they were doing their boot camp and they were doing all this team bonding stuff. And they're like, their players were even talking in that video, you know, Bjergsen and some of the other players that were like it's so great because usually you have to restart from ground zero. But we're coming off of spring and we boot camped and we're even better. And I was like, damn, TSM's about to pop off. And then it was like game 1, Liquid versus TSM. All right, what do they got for me? Is it Kali? Is it Aatrox? It's Azir and Ezreal, baby. We're going late. Like, wait, what the fuck? Like, you trolled me. Like,
they're They've progressed, just not in the way that you want them to. The ascended form of TSM.
Like, no.
Well, he literally says we'll pick up right where we left off, and you're like, okay.
Like that. Even all the TL players, I feel like everyone expected TL to get slammed because TL's like, yep, we're not playing League of Legends, so we're burned out. And TSM's like, we're ready. And then
ready to play for 50. I feel like someone's like, gotta maximize stage time, boys. Need to get those viewer hours up for the TSM game.
The TSM's Ven, like since his last one was the, you know, everyone had highlighted the finals thing. We're like, oh, he's going Ezreal. Like they've got it. They're so confident. I can't believe they're doing it. And the, you know,
and it was like a 26, 27-minute game, and TL
they got
obliterate them.
So I mean, TSM I don't think like is a bad team, and I think that they're going to improve a lot throughout the split. I still think they have really talented players, but thus far, because of the really high expectations, I agree they have been disappointing. The one thing I would say though, as far as like you're like, oh well, NA fans wouldn't want to defend as much because all our teams have made mistakes. I have watched every one of the 3 EU representatives games. And Origen makes a lot of mistakes too. I'm looking at my boy Mithy.
That mid game is awful.
And Mithy is certainly walking around and dying a lot.
You're 100% right.
So like when you guys talk about, you know, like, well, these other teams, they make the mistakes and that's why Origen is above them.
He's adapting to the environment
I think you should go watch because that's looking like some NA Mithy.
That's what I'm saying. He's getting ready for NA. He's preparing for the trip.
Well here,
right?
How are you going to flame NA while you're trying to say that we have a better chance? Damn, what the hell was that?
Because Mithy was sucking when he was in NA. And everyone's like, he's back to EU Mithy. You know, he's in EU. He's so good again. He has been bad this split. I have felt like he is not playing very well.
You like the many personalities of his
I love that. I love it.
He has been awful.
But
to be serious, I would really like to discuss the problems with he's bad, but I think maybe things could get better.
I mean, it's just like there's so many times where it feels like they're not playing around the knowledge of where the other team is, right? And I feel like that is one of the things. Like as much as Patrick has had some really good moments, the pop off moments, you know, even like the Ezreal game that you're talking talking about, where he goes over the wall and he kills Caps or whatever, and he goes back. I think that was against Caps.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's pretty nice. They were down, way down in farm and CS, and like,
And even that game, I was pretty confident that G2 made way more mistakes than admittedly Origen made like good plays in order to come back. So I'm bought in. Yeah.
Because when I talk about, or when you talk rather about around playing around Vision, I think Origen has actually been really bad at that this split.
Their mid game has been pretty weak.
There's a lot of times where they don't see members on the map, but they're just like, well, someone's probably not here. I guess I'll walk in, and they die as a result. And I think that when you want to play that more like a macro style, where you are trying to punish mistakes rather than being the crazy proactive G2 team, you don't get to make those kind of mistakes, because every time your support face checks and dies or whatever, it's setting you back a couple minutes, and you're giving your opponents like more chance to escalate the pace of the game and close it out, right? And we saw that Splice, G2, Fnatic all were able to do it, I think, largely off of a lot of mistakes around vision from Origen, where they don't know where people are on the map, but they walk in and someone dies, and then they lose too much. So that's something that I definitely do have as a big concern for them. I think that they do have really talented individual players. I think that their ceiling is fairly high, certainly. But I don't think that Origen is clearly a tier above TSM or C9.
Yeah, I think what happens a lot when we come to international competitions, we all VOD review the other regions, and I feel like you're way more critical, and your eye will pick up on all these mistakes, and you're like, yeah, I'm feeling way better about our chances. I just watched this game; they made mistakes here. Like, okay, and then
except VOD reviewing the entire G2 season takes 15 minutes. So then I'm like, ooh.
It's really like the cliff notes are the same as the full book. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But go on.
But
that's the end right there, buddy.
I agree with you. I guess for me, it's just that Origen have consistently, in my mind, made similar mistakes, right? So the point that you're making around
is that a
lack
good thing
of
to make the same mistake?
No.
Hear me out.
Right?
They make the same mistake every time, and they never learn.
Right. But it feels like I have a good judge of what level Origen is at, right?
Okay.
Whereas Cloud9 and TSM, their good games versus their bad games feel quite dramatically different.
Yeah.
So I struggle to have a good read on them. So typically I automatically underrate them rather than overrate them, because I base them more on the mistakes they make rather than the proactive stuff that they do, right? So whether I'm in the right or wrong of that, you can debate and you can say that I'm being unfair, and that's perfectly fine. But I'm pretty confident in where I judge Origen. I'm not so confident where I judge Cloud9 and TSM. So I then base them off of the mistakes they made more on the good things. So I'm like, okay, I think they're a little worse than what I'm seeing from Origen. So that's where my evaluation comes from, and I'm more than happy to be wrong on this. But there's also a little bit of EU bias in there as well, which I'm not ashamed.
It's all right. We are very used to being the underdogs, and maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised.
Maybe we'll get a Phoenix 1 special.
Hey, I just feel like we're setting ourselves up for it. Do you know what I mean? I remember the first Rift Rivals when EU was super confident.
Oh, I watched Level Down. I got my mind going. I got the edits in my head with all the.
It reminded me, by the way, when we won Rift Rivals, we didn't trash talk at all.
That's because we're great.
There was no trash talking. We were like, oh, all right, we won. And we saw how sad they were, and we're like, okay.
We're a twist the knife kind of region.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we really don't.
But I do hope though that after the event, that it's all it's fine. We can move past it. But before the event, you should definitely shit talk this more.
There's the 9-week period before we get to Worlds, and then if we're in different groups, it won't matter.
I can't say anything about the fans. Fans are always aggressive, and they're always going to be strongly opinionated. But I mean, I've already had multiple tweets how can you not say that Fnatic's not the best team in the world right now? I'm like, well, I guess I'm not good at my job. I don't know.
Yeah, because that one game is defining. Not all the ones that G2 played at MSI. Those games were
in the
forever
same way
ago.
that Rift Rivals will be defining for the rest of the year. It will clearly define everything.
Yes.
If G2 lose a game, it's over. Their career.
NA is better.
Yeah.
That's what it means.
Thank you. I'm glad we're
glad
alive.
we've established the stakes.
Yeah.
All right. I have one Twitter question.
Okay.
Do you have any, Azael? I got one here. It's for all of us. Which role needs the best macro and which needs the best micro? And does this vary region to region? This is from JT Savage 25.
I'm gonna say
role needs the best macro.
It's kind of weird because your team needs good
So-
macro. So
But I mean, I guess if you're thinking of map awareness and like map state and potentially like of making a lot of the decisions,
Yeah.
then I could see like support jungle maybe in that conversation. But
For me, I feel like for both, like jungle, I think is probably one of the easiest arguments to make for like the quote unquote macro like map awareness. But I think mid lane is like the most demanding in both, in the sense that like you're always fighting for wave pressure. You always have to be conscious of where the jungler is. When you get any advantage at all, you immediately have to go get something else with that mid lane priority, right? You either have to go to another lane, you either need to lay down vision, you need to think about your back timing, and it feels like mid is both the most powerful role and as a result, like also the most demanding role.
Yeah. So I was going to make the jungle argument for sure because it's a no-brainer, especially for the early game. You have to be thinking about the entire map the entire time. It's the role that moves around the most. And as far as the micro, yes, I want everybody on my team to have good micro, but I would agree with mid laners, especially with the solo lane champions that have been popular recently. There's actually very little debate. I think that's gonna be where you want your micro intensive players or your solo lanes.
so like, I'm kind of edging towards top lane, only because in my mind, mid lane matchups, like. Mainly it's because top lane
It's longer.
it's longer, but also like you're almost always in like range versus melee, like in my experience, right? And maybe I'm wrong on this because I'm not a top laner, right?
Yeah.
I went top lane once.
Always.
I played just like I played in mid, and I lost. And now I'm
Are you
convinced-
first pick?
Yeah.
You got counterpicked.
Yeah, like, that's why. But like, I feel like in top lane you almost always get counterpicked.
Yeah, because
And so,
the
like,
lane's so long.
Yeah, and so like you're either always playing with an overwhelming advantage or disadvantage, and you have to understand what to do in both sides of the matchup. And if you fail, then like it can be really detrimental to the entirety of the game.
So I kind of like the argument, but I think it depends massively on meta, right? So if it's
That's
if
true.
it's a tank heavy,
Yeah.
if it's a tank heavy meta, I'm actually fully confident that I can lane against any LCS
Yeah.
player in a tank versus tank.
Like, I don't know if
I
you've
would
seen
fail-
my Maokai, but I can last hit real good under that tower,
I would
baby.
fail at every other check throughout the game, right? Like the team fighting, the vision, all that stuff. But the laning is actually very easy in tank versus tank, right? Like if you are like a high diamond player or whatever, you can CS well enough. That's easy. They're just gonna play the map way better than you and win the game. But carry versus carry is actually really hard to play, and mistakes I think are punished more heavily
that's what it feels.
because in mid lane it's so hard to freeze the lane on someone. Like the lane is very short. It's a lot easier to play, to one side of the river where your jungler is and have kind of that safe side.
I also just
like,
find it's easier for a jungler to just come in,
Yeah, because
help
it's just
with
in
the
your
wave
jungle
management
path
as
naturally.
well.
Gragas
Yeah.
can walk by and throw
Yeah.
a barrel and
Yeah.
not lose anything other than revealing his position.
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing carry versus carry top, like if you're playing, I don't know, you're playing Fiora and they pick Jace or something, and you're getting blasted early and it's frozen on you or whatever, like that is really brutal. If you pick Aurelia and they counter pick you, they're playing Renekton with Ignite or something, and you mess up and you die, well, now it's frozen on you, you're doomed
A
forever.
Carly
right?
Renekton top lane, perhaps.
Shot at level 1.
That's tough, but yeah,
Enemy Gragas come?
Yeah.
I think that might be a good.
it's never a fair fight. It's never a fair fight. That's what you learn.
Is no one gonna say 80 carry though for micro?
I actually don't.
Have those times passed?
Well, I agree in team fighting and stuff, it's extremely important, and like farm, but like really at the highest level, farm and all that is so important in every role. I think
I also
it depends what champion you're playing.
I also
Really,
think
at the end of the day.
Really, yeah, I think it's very highly champion dependent. Also, like, it's also hard to tell generally how much an AD carry is micromanaged in the mid game because there's like a history of just like support players with better macros and saying, "Hey, go farm this wave. Hey, go farm that wave." But you spend a lot of your time in mid game just catching waves and farming.
You
and
gotta
reaching-
shoot them at the right time to get the gold.
Sure, and that's great. But like every other role, like has to be ready to fight at a moment's notice. And the AD carry's like,
go mid.
yeah, you're like, okay, you're gonna go mid,
Wait.
and you're gonna get some farm, and then you're gonna go top, and you're gonna get some farm, and then like 12 minutes, we're gonna try to fight them. We're gonna still try to fight, but you just please don't participate. Just
Yeah.
go farm in the side.
Also, like, I feel having duoed with Medic does way more of the work in that lane than I do. I just sit there and watch, and I'm like, all right, Medic, you generate pressure. You tell me when you want to trade, and
I feel like that might be a personal thing though, too.
I feel like we're projecting a little bit.
I think that's true when I play scaling ADs, which is why I find it boring. because it's like if I pick like Jinx or Trist or something, you don't really want to trade very heavily. Usually, you're gonna lose the trades. But if you're playing like Lucian Draven, then you're a pretty you're a pretty big part of the lane, which is why at the end of the day, I think it's champion based, right? Like because top lane playing like a Yasuo is extremely difficult, and those matchups, and then there's also really complex mechanical matchups, bot and stuff. So
versus mid lane Lissandra meta versus playing a Kali or whatever.
Macro is just like whoever your shot caller is what I'm assuming there. I mean, I guess you could make the argument. I think as far as like the individual player who has to understand the most, but someone could be piloting you essentially.
Yeah.
But if you're a split pusher, whether that's mid laner or top laner, I think split push to play actually at the pro level, you have to have a very, very good macro sense of like where they could be, how long it will take them to get to you when they go off of vision, and how far you can push it. Because there's so many games where I see teams split pushing and the guys just kind of like meandering back and forth, like pushing a wave and never hitting the turret. And it's like, you're not accomplishing anything, right? You really have to be able to ride the line well between getting damage in and pushing the pace, and also not just like inting it to every single time someone collapses.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's one of those things where like I think you mostly have to look at the laning phase to talk about a lot of that, because pretty much anything outside of lane phase, it's really easy to imagine it being micromanaged by someone else. Like it is absolutely a skill. It's just hard to attribute that skill without like listening to team comms and understanding who's actually making those decisions. But yeah, like split pushing is the thing that like I think, especially for newer players, you can always tell where players that don't play a lot of split pushers, like an area where they're weak, right? And it's the most easily visible because you literally see those moments for 20 or 30 seconds where they're walking back and forth. Do I back now? Do I push? Is this wave in the right spot? Like you can always tell when someone is messing up on a side lane.
Mm-hmm.
Any other Twitch questions?
I don't have any more unless you found one.
Ones.
That is going to do it for this episode of Divephoria then. Tune in tomorrow, boom, for the Cloud9 versus G2 match and
the show match
that has
bet
a bet.
1 in 5 dream, baby.
Let us know actually who you think is going to end. Someone is guaranteed to end in this game. Who is going to run it down? Let us know on Twitter.
Medic.
You think it's you?
Who wants double buffs? Coming.